Hello there, and good afternoon, citizens of Hockey Nation. Welcome to Puck Around and Find Out March 19th. Everybody who is in the chat while watching, please say hi to my dog Oki, who is taking a little nap, while we dive into the insane action that was had last night in the NHL. A bunch of games that had very huge wildcard implications that I want to discuss. And we're going to dive right into it. First, let's take a look at the standings. Starting in the Western Conference, not a big change in terms of who is in the wild card spots. It's still Minnesota and Vancouver. Minnesota obviously has a pretty sizable lead right now, and I think that it's pretty safe to say that they're going to be one of the wild card teams. Just given how separated they are from the Avalanche. Vancouver in the second spot is actually tied with the St. Louis Blues. Now they have a game in hand, and they won last night. Big win over the Jets. But the Blues are right there with them, and the Blues actually have a positive goal differential. I'm going to get to them in a little bit, but you can see there the Canucks tied with the Blues, 2 points ahead of the Calgary Flames, who tailing off my beloved Chaos Goblins, not quite holding on to the spot as well as they could, along with their fellow brothers, the Columbus Blue Jackets. And then we have the Utah Hockey Club, who is still technically kind of in contention for the playoffs. 3 points over 500, 4 points back with 14 games to go. It's going to be very tough for them to make the playoffs, in my opinion. But certainly they have a chance. And that would be one heck of a Cinderella story if Utah managed to make their way into the playoffs this year, especially after the years of drama that this organization had while in Arizona. They get a good owner, and first year they immediately make the playoffs. So rooting for that. Sorry, just adjusting the camera because I realized you can't really see the Doge. He's back there. So let's go up now and talk about what's, in my opinion, the more interesting wild card race, that being the East. Obviously, last night the Senators played the Canadiens. Watched that game. It was a barn burner, back and forth. Canadiens ended up winning and leapfrogging the Rangers to take the second wild card spot. Now, 4 point separation between the Sens and the Canadiens. I think the Senators pretty solidly going to make the playoffs and be in the wild card. Again, they're 6 points back of the Leafs and the Lightning, so I don't think that they're getting one of the 2-3 seeds in the Atlantic. But I think that they're clear enough, 5 points clear of the Rangers, that they're going to make the playoffs. The Canadiens now obviously are in that number 2 spot for the wild card after that win last night. But you can see the Rangers 1 point behind. They are 2 games back behind the Canadiens. The Canadiens have 2 games in hand on the Rangers. But you can also see we have the New York Islanders. It's no games in hand, but they're 3 points back. So they still, amazingly, even though the Isles sold at the deadline, could have a chance of making the playoffs this year. You also have the Blue Jackets, also same situation as the Isles. That 4-game losing streak that they had last week really killing them. If they had gone 500, they'd be the second wildcard spot right now. Very disappointing for my other Chaos Goblins, but they still have a chance. And then there's the Detroit Red Wings. 70 points, but the Canadiens have a game in hand on them. And the Detroit Red Wings also have one of the toughest strengths of schedule remaining in the NHL. And actually, let's go ahead and take a look at that really quick, because when it comes to strength of schedule, that's, I think, at this point, really going to inform which teams have the best chance to make the playoffs. And you can see Detroit has the toughest strength of schedule left. They have to play Dallas, Vegas, Carolina, Florida twice, Colorado, and Tampa. And they're 3 points back with 1 game fewer to recover over the Canadiens. Now, as for the Canadiens, they have 19th hardest strength of schedule. They're going to play Carolina twice, Florida twice, Colorado, Toronto, and Ottawa. But they also get Philly twice. They get Chicago and Nashville, very winnable games for them. And then a couple of battles against the Red Wings and the Islanders. Those will be interesting games to watch. As far as teams that are in the wild card hunt that have easy strengths of schedule, you can see one in the East is Ottawa. This is another reason why I think they are almost a lock to make the playoffs. They're going to play Carolina, Florida, Colorado, New Jersey, and Tampa, but they also get Buffalo twice. They get the Blue Jackets 3 times. Those are going to be huge games for both them and the Blue Jackets. They get the Penguins, they get the Flyers, they get the Blackhawks. St. Louis, the other team that is not quite in the playoffs right now, has the second easiest strength of schedule remaining. They have the Jets, Avs twice, Oilers, but they also get the Blackhawks, the Predators twice, the Kraken, the Penguins, all very winnable games, all games that they should be favored to win. And then they also get the Red Wings in the hockey club. They should have a better than not chance to win those games, although those will be tougher than these 5. So as far as the teams that are in the wild card chase right now, the Canadiens have a pretty easy strength of schedule. The Senators have the easiest strength of schedule. The St. Louis Blues in the Western Conference have the second easiest strength of schedule, which is huge. As far as the other teams that are in the hunt, Utah is right around Montreal. New York Rangers have the 12th hardest strength of schedule. They're going to play Carolina, Florida, Tampa twice, Toronto, LA, and the Wild. They do get the Sharks, Ducks, Flyers, and then the Canucks and Islanders are going to be battle games for both teams. But as far as the teams that are really not going to have a shot, Detroit, the Islanders they have very tough strengths of schedules. And then Columbus is 9th hardest strength of schedule left. So from these strengths of schedules, I think that the teams that are going to get in are St. Louis, because they are even with the Canucks, but 1 game back, but they have an easier strength of schedule, the second easiest. And I think the Canadiens it's going to be the Canadiens, I think, getting in. There's really not a good path. The Red Wings have no chance. The Blue Jackets have an outside chance, but they need to make up ground. The Rangers, they have the best chance, but they also have 2 games. They have 2 fewer games. The Islanders have a very tough strength of schedule. So with that in mind, as a fan of the team that is right now projected to have the number 1 seed in the East, the Washington Capitals, I want to talk about why the Montreal Canadiens are both the team I want to play the most and the team that scares me the most. Because the Canadiens are, and I'm going to say this very bluntly, a bad team. They are not a good team. They currently have a minus 16 goal differential, which is the worst of any team that is in the realistic shot to make the wild card other than Detroit. And when you look at their advanced analytics, when you look at the expected goal ratio in all situations, the Montreal Canadiens are 4th worst in the NHL. The only teams worse than them are the Ducks, Sharks, and Blackhawks. They're behind the Sabres. They're behind the Kraken. They're behind the Penguins. They're behind the Predators. Okay? Now, this isn't an end-all and be-all, but what it tells me is that this is a team that is consistently getting outplayed. If you look down here in the Money Puck plot line, they fall right into the bad division. They're down here past the Sabres, up with the Ducks, Sharks, Blackhawks. Now the Caps, who are going to be playing them, are in the good section, but they're not one of the elite, not one of the best. Caps have been kind of getting a lot of help from their goaltending, which leads me to ask, how is it that the Canadiens, the 4th worst team in terms of expected goal differential, are in the playoffs right now? And the answer is because of one factor: goaltending. If you look at total goals saved above expected, you have Sam Montembeault, number 5. And then you have, where is he? Jacob Dobes, 31st, but he has only played in 12 games. In terms of goals saved above expected per 60 for goalies who have played in at least 10 games, you have 2 guys in the top 12. And if you go to 15, because Merlin and Anderson have only played in 12 and 14 games, you get rid of Dobes, but you put Montembeau in the top 10 goals saved above expected per 60. Now, in fairness, Logan Thompson is second in that metric. But when I look at the Canadiens, I see a team that is among the worst in the NHL in terms of their overall team play. They do not have a ton of great players. They have some very good players. I know everybody's running around this morning saying Nick Suzuki is a number one center. He's an elite number one center. I don't know if I believe that. I think he is a great number two, a mediocre to bad number one. Cole Caulfield is an elite right wing. I do believe that. Cole Hudson is an elite defenseman already. I do believe that. They have a great goaltender right now in Montembeau, like I said. The other aspects of their team are pretty well lacking. So I think from a just team on team perspective, the Caps would roll over the Canadiens. But they have a goaltender. They have two goaltenders because Dobesh is not on here who could steal games. And for Caps fans, that should elicit a lot of terrifying flashbacks to 2009, 2010. The Caps were the best team in the NHL. They were so clearly superior to the Canadiens in that first round matchup. And what happened? Yaroslav Halak. Sam Montembeau or Jacob Dobesh could easily be this year's Yaroslav Halak. And when you compare them to the teams that the Caps could be facing in the first round, Rangers, Islanders, Blue Jackets, Red Wings, the team I want to see is the Blue Jackets because they are both not as good and I don't have as much confidence in their goaltending. When it comes to the Rangers, the Islanders, not the Red Wings, but I don't think the Red Wings are making it in. Shesterkin. The Blue Jackets do not have elite goaltending this year in Merzlikins. The Canadiens do not have elite goaltending, but they have two goaltenders who are playing elite right now. And there's a distinction. There's a difference about a distinction, I guess. The difference just is that I wouldn't say that Montembeau and Dobesh are have consistently shown themselves to be elite goaltenders, but this year they are playing like it. So honestly, I would take the Senators over the Canadiens if I could, because I also don't have that much faith in Linus Ullmark. But I think the Senators are a better team overall than the Canadiens are. You can see down here they're pretty mediocre in terms of their expected goal ratio. Excuse me. So I would rather play them than play. Oh, I'm not showing it. Hold on. Yeah, you can see in terms of their expected goal ratio, they're right here, right in the middle. So they'd be a little bit worse than the Caps. But I don't have confidence in Linus Ullmark the way I do Sam Montembeau or Dobesh. So in terms of who I want to see in the playoffs for the Caps in the first round, give me the Sens, give me the Jackets. I would rather see the Canadiens than the Rangers or the Islanders because, again, don't have as much. These are two elite goaltenders. These are two goaltenders, excuse me, who are playing elite right now. I'd rather take the chance on that. But that's who I want to shout out and why I think the Montreal Canadiens are both the team that excites me the most to play in the first round and also terrifies me the most because I think they are the easiest team the Caps could play, but they have the most potential to pull a random upset like they did about 15 years ago. But speaking of the other teams in the wildcard spot, I did want to shout out two of the teams who played last night, the Rangers and the Islanders, for different reasons. The Islanders obviously had a big comeback win over the Pittsburgh Penguins, which I know everybody's wetting their pants about, but if you need to come back to beat the Pittsburgh Penguins, kind of got to ask yourself why you're in that position in the first place. The Islanders are just the most inconsistent and erratic team that is getting bailed out consistently by Ilya Sorokin. If you take a look over at goals saved above expected, overall, Sorokin's 10th, and goals saved above expected per 60 if you filter for 10 games. Sorokin, I think, is... Oh, there he is. I missed him. He's top 25. So good goaltender is really helping the New York Islanders out, but the Islanders are a team that I think is not as bad as everybody considers them to be. They're right here in that money puck plot. The Rangers, on the other hand, lost last night in a game to the Calgary Flames, and Rangers fans are very unhappy with their performance last night. And I did not watch the entire Rangers game last night. I was watching Canadian Senators. But the Rangers, from what I did watch, and I watched the highlights after, and I flipped back to it during the game, the Rangers looked extremely disorganized. They looked like a team that does not have a clue how to play to their system, if they even have a system. They are a team that is just sort of meandering. After the game, Coach Peter Laviolette was talking about the compete level and the effort not being there. Rasmus Anderson came out and said like the Rangers were a bit too focused on him and not playing the game. And that should be setting off alarm bells for everybody in the Rangers organization and the Rangers fan base. You cannot be almost at game 70 and having these sorts of issues right now, especially when you added at the deadline. You added JT Miller. You added a bunch of defensemen who didn't play last night also. Guys like Susie did scratch. I believe that was what was reported. But, you made moves to get better. You did trade away Ryan Lindgren, of course, but you are still a team that fancies yourself to be competitive, and you don't really have a long runway to continue to be competitive. Like you've traded away Capo Caco, traded away Lindgren. Your only young star players are like Laff, and I guess you could maybe throw Keandre Miller in there, but I wouldn't even throw Keandre Miller in there saying he's a star, but he's a good young player. But you don't have a solid foundation moving forward the way you did last year, and you're not playing as well. And when you are also in a situation where you're not playing well and you're not playing to your system, that should be a big concern for the New York Rangers, who are currently faltering and just not looking like a team that is ready to go into the playoffs. Now, the reason, again, as a Caps fan, they scare me is because of Shesterkin. Once again, when you look at the goalies for this year, goal saved above expected, Shesterkin is 4th. Goal saved above expected per 60. And you filter for 10 games, Shesterkin's 10th. He is still an elite goaltender. He is the best player on their team. There's a reason that they paid him all that money in the extension and why I think it was a good move, because he is still one of the best, if not the best goaltenders in the NHL. Not the best. Hellebuck's the best, but he's one of the 5 best goaltenders in the NHL. And if you give me Shesterkin in the playoffs, I think you can win a lot of games. They did it last year. They beat Carolina in a series that they shouldn't have, and they almost beat Florida in a series that they shouldn't have. Goaltending in the playoffs can just win you 1 or 2 games and win you a series, and Shesterkin can do that. And the fact that you have him and you might not make the playoffs, even when you added, is abysmally bad for the Rangers. When you have such a talented team, you were the best team in the NHL last year. And you can't tell me that losing guys like, Eric Gustafsson, Capo Caco just makes you, go from that to a wildcard team. I just don't believe it. So it's bad in Rangers land. They are a team that just does not have a direction. A lot of people, a lot of Rangers fans I know are talking about they need to fire Peter Laviolette. As somebody who rode the Lavi experience in Washington, I can say he's a guy who has a shelf life. And he is not a guy that you want. He is a guy who will also push out a lot of your younger players, Capo Caco nods, in favor of veterans who are not quite as good. He wants to have guys who run his system, and he is not very forgiving to players who do not fit that system, especially younger guys. So that's the Rangers. They are in for a world of hurt right now. All right, now let's shift over to the Western Conference, where we had some very big games last night. The biggest being the Canucks beating the Winnipeg Jets. The Canucks are a really puzzling team. You look at their goal differential, they're minus 14. When you look at their last 10, they're 5-5. They are a team that has there's just been so much drama with this team over the course of this year. Yeah, the whole Pedersen thing, JT Miller. They haven't had Thatcher Demko. Kevin Lankinen looked like he was great at the beginning of the year, then kind of cooled off. It's a real credit to Rick, who, the reigning Jack Adams winner, that the Canucks have managed to hang on to their wildcard spot, and they look like they're in a spot to make it. Really impressive, in my opinion. I also got to shout Quinn Hughes. Obviously, that guy is a menace, and in my opinion, he is the best defenseman in the NHL. I know a lot of people will say Makar, but I think Quinn Hughes, not only for leadership purposes, not only from leadership perspective, but also from the perspective of like defensive defenseman. I think he's a better defensive defenseman than Cale Makar, is what I'm trying to say. But the Canucks still hold on to the wild card spot, the second wild card spot, but I think they are in danger of losing it to the team that I shouted out as having one of the easiest strength of schedules, the St. Louis Blues. Now, the Blues did play last night. They beat the Predators 4-1. And the thing about the Blues is, first of all, it's interesting that the Blues have just not been talked about at all this year. They have consistently just been hanging around this area, not ever being a wild card team, but just kind of being in the mix, and nobody's really talking about them. A lot of focus has been on the Canucks, the Flames, as being the other wild card teams, and not so much the Blues. Obviously, Jordan Binnington is a huge, huge reason why they are still in this position. And going back to the goaltending, goal saves above expected, you have Binnington. I think he's... Where is he? Did I pass him? No, I can't have passed him. Bad preparation on my part. He can't be that low. Oh, wow. He actually, Jordan Binnington, I take it back, is not helping this team. So let's take a look at their team itself, how they have been playing. You look at expected goal ratio, the graph down here. The Blues are just a good defensive team. That's what it is. And I mean, given how expensive some of their backline has been, or how much they've invested in their backline, they got Parenko, they got Falk, they've got excuse me. Excuse me. Sorry. They got Cam Fowler back there now. But they've also upgraded that front line, that front six, very, very effectively and under the radar, with adding like Holloway. Jordan Kyrou is obviously great. Rob Thomas is great. The Blues are just like the team that's laying in the weeds, and I think that's really fascinating. So I don't know. In terms of who I think is going to make it, I think it's the Blues. The Flames obviously beat the Rangers last night. Very big win for them, and I'm happy that they're still keeping pace. I just don't know. They have a chance. They actually have a good chance because they have a game in hand on the Canucks. But I don't know if they're going to be able to pull it out over the Blues, because then the Blues have the second easiest strength of schedule. But it's going to be interesting. Tonight we have games that really don't have a lot of wild card implications. You have the Avs and the Maple Leafs, the Kraken and the Wild. The Wild, yes, are the number one wild card spot. They should beat the Kraken. And even if they don't, they're still 6 points clear of the Canucks, the Blues. So I think that they are still pretty well slated to get into the playoffs as a wild card. Maybe potentially they could overtake the Avalanche, but I don't think it's a high possibility. So that's it. Again, we'll take a look tomorrow, see how the wild card is shaken out. Thanks everybody who is watching. Drop a hi to Oki if you come by afterwards. I'll see you on the next one.